to them. In restaurants in particular, it's even more awkward. It's a vertical that people tend to have a little bit of awkwardness about pulling it out if it's a nicer restaurant. It's not the case in every vertical. You know, for skydiving, people have no issue using a voucher. So, but with restaurants in particular, you know, the voucher can be a little bit awkward, and that's one of the reasons why Groupon Plus is focused today on restaurants today. And then the second ingredient towards being a marketplace is a lot more inventory than you have today. And you know, if you think about the large marketplaces, Amazon was mentioned earlier. I think a few times. I'm trying to think of who else was mentioned. But if you think of some of these really big marketplaces, they have millions of items of inventory, like millions and millions of SKUs. And when you go on there, you sort of know that they'll have something for you. And local, that's, I won't say it's easy, but it's one thing when you can go to wholesalers, if your marketplace is in physical goods and you can go to wholesalers, you don't have to go to every individual producer and get them on, then you can get that kind of scale. In local, it's really difficult because you can't. There's an individual business owner on the opposite side of all of them. And so going and getting that kind of density, and then if you just look at the SMB market, how big local is, it's a really difficult thing to do, but the best things are often very difficult. And so that's sort of how we view where Groupon is going to be more of a marketplace. Way more supply and a more frictionless experience. And frictionless doesn't just mean card-linked offers. We're placing a lot of investments in booking. You know, in some verticals, you don't need to have a card-linked offer, you don't need a voucher, but simply prepaying for the experience and selecting your time slot for whatever that may be at salons, for example, or a walking tour. That's a frictionless, and I'd in particular say voucherless experience as well. That said, for restaurants in particular and quite a few other of our verticals, we are placing a big bet and making a lot of investment in card-linked offers. And so about 2 years ago, I got involved in it at what started as a project, what started as a test to test card-linked offers. And the reasons why, you know, we might think card-linked offers in particular made sense for restaurants. It's all the reasons that I already sort of touched on, and all the reasons that I think everybody already knows, right? It's an elegant experience that doesn't take the merchant training. They don't have to train up their staff on accepting a voucher. It's more flexibility in the offer type, in the discount levels. All those reasons just make it for a really elegant experience. And so we started off as a test. It wasn't called Groupon Plus at the time. It was just a test. And fast forward to today, and it's now become essentially the top initiative in the company. It's a pillar, again, not the only piece, but a key pillar of our voucherless strategy, and it paves the way for a voucherless Groupon, as it says. And so if you look at where we are today, you know, Groupon Plus is live in around 25 markets. We've got over 5,000 offers live with local merchants and some national as well, a relatively small number of national. You know, SMBs, local is really still our bread and butter and will continue to be. And then there's the average reward amount. It's somewhere in the 20s, but you'll see offers up to 30%, or really you'll even see 40 and 50% cashback offers. And if you know, a point on that in terms of how, you know, the types of offers that we have, if you think about, in Groupon's taking a chunk of our business, which has been vouchers to date, it's 50% off, 20 for 40 voucher, and you think about taking that and shifting that over to a card-linked mechanism, it just didn't make sense for us when we looked at the CLO models that were out there to go from something where a consumer today expects what they perceive to be 50% discount, and they're individually purchasing the voucher, and so the merchant knows for sure, whether they like it or not, that somebody bought that voucher on Groupon and it's going in because of the voucher, so there's fairly strong attribution with a voucher. Going to a model where instead somebody signs up for a program and then just sort of gets these relatively lower 10 or even 7% cashback offers that are just sort of automatically applied, it just seemed like a big jump and a bit disruptive too disruptive to our business. And so it made sense for us to try to sort of mimic aspects of our voucher model as we move to card linking. And so therefore, we moved to what we call claimable offers, but it's click to activate. Jonathan was asking about them earlier. You know, I don't think it's a new concept for folks in this room, but we've made it's a pretty, we feel pretty strongly that claimable offers, click to activate, are right for Groupon, and also, candidly, probably more sustainable and right for the industry. And you know, the way that they work is you click to activate the offer, You go and spend on your card, and then you get cash back. We give push notifications upon the auth in real time, right? Congrats, we see you just redeemed your 20 or 30% cash back offer. Your cash back's on its way. And you know, the positives, which is, again, probably obvious for everybody in this room, it's stronger attribution. We need to be able to go to a merchant and say that we know we drove this transaction, and in return from that, we get richer rewards. Again, 20, 30, 40% cash back. It's a bit of a trade-off. We'll make sure we'll add this piece of friction or this click, but in return, we're able to give consumers a richer value proposition. The trade-off, the downside on the consumer side in particular, is just that there's a learning curve, right? It's difficult. It's hard to train your consumers and get them to click every time. There are cases where all the time where there's offers that we have and a consumer is enrolled in a program, but they don't click. They don't see the offer. They don't click. And so I understand, we understand the trade-offs, and that it's nice to not have that and be able to sort of have everybody be auto-enrolled in all the offers. This is the way sort of that we've done it. And we think there's some positives beyond just the trade-offs I mentioned here, and I'll allude to this a little bit later. So switching gears a little bit, Groupon's entrance into card-linked offers, as well as a lot of others, is indicative of the trend that has been mentioned quite a few times here, and that I think is evident to, I'm sure Silvio will tell you this any chance he gets, as well as people in this room have echoed it. It's growing. I'd echo sort of what John said earlier. There's signals out there that there are folks interested in the space, companies interested in the space, who have not been interested previously and who have not started dipping their toes in previously. You guys are familiar with this. What previously was largely an issuer proposition and really one consumer program, today looks like a bunch of commerce platforms like Groupon and others, content sites like a Yelp, ride sharing. There's a lot more airlines and other companies showing interest in it. And what we think the reason for this is, if you sort of take a step back, what are the building blocks that have resulted in this? 10 years ago, and there are folks here who know a lot more about this history than I do, but 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago, the only ways to create your card-linked offer program were to connect to issuers and do issuer programs. And if you're doing that, that really means you were doing issuer programs. Issuers generally aren't going to license their data out for other people to use for other programs that are open to the public. You're doing issuer programs. Or your rewards network, and you were crazy enough to do a bunch of processor integrations that I wouldn't probably advise doing. It seems, kudos to them for doing it. But you went to processors and patchworked together the processors. And that's probably it's not every company is going to get in if those are your options. So what then happened 5, 6, whatever it was years ago, is the card networks, right? Productized APIs, made it easy so that you could do 3 or 4, now 4 integrations and get essentially full coverage. And then there are companies that sit on top of that now, like Empire, that allow you to do 1 integration and get full coverage. And I think that's what we'd really attribute this growth is. It was sort of a non-starter for a lot of companies before to get interested. That now, when that's the way that you can get into it and you can get access to this transaction data, it opens up a whole new world. And that was it for us as well. We wouldn't patch together or POSs, all the options out there. The card network option just sort of makes the most sense. And I think that's what most of the companies entering this space or looking at this space are seeing, why you see this interest. And so it's enabled a proliferation of new programs, and a hat tip to the card networks who are here for doing that, for believing in it, investing in it, and supporting the space. And so it's created this proliferation of new programs, which is great. It's great for the space. It's great for all the programs that participate in it because increased just consumer awareness and merchant awareness, sort of rising tide raises all ships. However, there's some challenges that come with growth as well that I want to point out here. And one of the great things about going last, one thing is, one of the not so great things is that you're the one who sits in between, sitting here in a room and cocktail hour. But the upside is that I get to kind of echo things that were already said. A lot of what I'm saying here, I'm not the first one saying this even today. Content there's a lot of hunger for content. So the internet's created these platforms now that have tens or hundreds of millions of consumers. And a lot of them are the ones knocking on the door interested in card-linked offers. But in order to get content at scale, and even not at scale, even with the national merchants, it is not an easy thing to do, to onboard them, find their mids, manage their budgets, explain them what this even is, keep them engaged. It's not easy to do, and even these massive multi-billion-dollar companies with hundreds of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of consumers don't necessarily have the appetite to scale up a sales team, build out the operations to onboard these offers and support them. They're just not going to do it. They want in the card-linked offers, but they're not going to source their own offers at scale. I'm generalizing. There are some who will, but a lot who won't. And so if you say, hey, the only way you can get into card-linked offers is if you're going to go out and sign these merchants yourself, there'll just be a lot of potential participants in the space with a lot of users who will just say, sorry, we can't do it. And so it's hard to source at scale. And what it means is it requires specialists. It requires companies that are making the investment that will go out and source the offers. And I think you've heard that again. There's a lot of companies say we need more content, more access to content, more sharing of content. Totally buy into that. It's true. It's I think what the industry. One of the key things the industry needs as it grows and as more interest rises. The other one, which sort of anybody who's spoken to me, and I think I've spoken to half the people in this room, and anybody who's spent time with me is probably sick of hearing me say my favorite word, which is stacking, which is my buzzword. And these quotes that I have here, here's how to stack. I think it's the last one that sort of raises the alarms with me most. I was able to quad dip at a restaurant twice with the following programs. Yes, these comments happen today on obscure Reddit threads and things like that, and it may not be super widespread, but I'm here to, I guess, a little bit sound the alarm that as more participants enter the space and have interest and are getting content from various different sources, what that means is there's a lot more chances for programs to collide into each other because, their national merchants, generally speaking, have professional marketing teams that understand sort of what they're doing and understand what's going on. And if you're selling into SMBs, you do your best to explain to them the behind the scenes, how this works with the card networks. But the reality is, I think anybody in here, it would be lying if they said that every SMB that participates in card-linked offers fully understands what's going on behind the scenes and what the risks are. I mean, you've seen it. There are some who just want to participate in multiple programs, and that's great. They should, and we should allow them and create the groundwork for them to participate in multiple programs. So what that means is there's more chance for unrelated programs to collide into each other and for consumers to earn rewards twice or 3 or 4 times. And, John mentioned earlier that, and I agree completely, the competition here really is the CPC and the CPM. It's what else is that merchant going to do with their budget? And they have plenty of other options out there that offer good attribution and a lot, and interesting analytics. And, it's Facebook, it's Google, it's offline ads, mailers, things like that. And we want to make it card-linked offers be a great option for them, the CPR option for them. The thing is if walk a merchant in, if we unwittingly, not that anybody's doing this on purpose, but I think we're one sort of horror story of a merchant, sort of away from sort of a quad dip for scaring merchants off, right? And I don't want that to happen. I don't think anybody wants that to happen. So I think as an industry, I'm here to say, like, stacking, I think, is something that I hope as an industry we can talk about more and work through more. And CardLinx has set the groundwork. There's the COBRA standard, which is the standard which lays out a logic for how stacking might be handled. As far as I know, there's not really a lot of implementation. The standard itself even says this is not commenting on how this would be implemented. This is laying out the logic for it. And I think we can probably take things further. I guess what I'm saying is we'd love to collaborate and also have some ideas on that. But that's another challenge, right? Is more potential for offer stacking that comes with that growth. So what are some solutions? Offer sharing, or what we call distribution, is a solution in some sense for both of these challenges. And so again, echoing some of the things you've heard earlier, the industry needs more content sharing. It needs specialization. It needs the ability for sort of demand to meet supply, even if that's not necessarily sourced all through the same platform. And we fully support that and want to participate in that where we can. And so, on the first challenge, the access to offer content, it's simply sharing content solves it. So without offer content distribution, if you were to say, hey, every card-linked offer program has to source their own offers, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of potential companies will just avoid participation in the ecosystem. Oh, I got to scale up a sales team, won't do it. The flip side of that, taking the merchant view, is that you make merchants contract with multiple programs, right? If you say, hey, merchant, if you want access to 20 different publisher programs, you got to sign 20 different contracts and keep track of the 20 different programs you're participating in. And by the way, there's 20 different chances for stacking if you do that. But regardless, you got to sign, contract with each of it individually in order to gain that reach. It's too much contracting burden. The stacking risk will increase. And it'll just push a lot of potential advertisers, as I mentioned, to the CPCs and the CPMs of the world, alternative online to offline marketing solutions. And so with offer content distribution, market participants can specialize. Some companies come into the space that have a relative strength in demand and consumers. Others come in with a relative strength in supply. They meet, everybody can confidently participate. It just means more consumer programs will come in, more merchants will confidently come in, and again, that raises awareness and kind of the rising tide effect happens. The second piece with offer stacking, right, is offer sharing can be a solution for that as well. And it happens in a few different ways today. And by the way, none of what I'm saying here obviously is rocket science. It exists today. There are companies out there that do exactly this. Again, kudos for paving the way. I'm simply echoing what's already been said today. This should continue because this solves the distribution piece provides a real legitimate function in the industry. But in terms of stacking, right, the image on the left, if there's no distribution, one of the key functions that a content distributor can provide to publishers is to be what I would call sort of the clearinghouse or the node who decides, who sort of directs traffic, right? Who solves for stacking, who makes sure that a same consumer can't earn rewards in these two programs that are receiving the same content. And so without that clearing function, without that distribution, it looks like on the left, right? Program 1, 2, and 3 all contract individually with the merchant. Consumer enrolls in program 1, 2, and 3 with that same card, and nobody's the wiser. Nobody really knows. The same transaction goes 3 different times, and each of those 3 programs, which are unrelated, bill the merchant. In most cases, the reporting that happens is going to be difficult to track for a merchant to take reporting from different programs and tie them together and even piece together that this was the same transaction. But even if they did, these are unrelated programs, and sort of the merchant participated in them. And then the consumer gets three rewards. So with the clearing function, with distribution, it just looks like the right side, right? Program 2 now is the one that contracts directly with the merchant. They distribute their offer content, in this case to program 1, directly to the consumer, because they may have their own consumer program as well as to program 3. In this case, program 1 wins, right? And winning is defined a few different ways, right? There's which program did you enroll in last? With claimable offers, and I'll touch on this in a minute, you can do things a little bit differently. But one program wins, right? In this case, program 1 wins, and in that case, that's the only program that gets the attribution. Program 2, as the node, performs that clearing function. They decide, hey, program 1, you won this one. Our program didn't, and this program didn't, so you won this, and that's the one that messages the consumer. That's the one that gives rewards to the consumer. Merchant is protected. And not only that, merchant is protected, but they get wider distribution as well. And so this is what I mean. And obviously, we take a claimable or click-to-activate view, because that's our offer content, so we're biased, perhaps. But the thing I'll point out that's kind of elegant about claimable offers is, you can distribute the same offer on multiple programs if it's claimable. And whereas in an auto-claim program, you can't, the only action that a consumer takes is enrolling in the program. So you can't really actually let the same card enroll in multiple programs, even if the offer content can exist on those programs. And with claimable offers, you can, right? They provide a unique benefit in that same, not only can that offer content reside on multiple related programs, one individual card can enroll in multiple programs because the action being taken is not the enrollment. That's not what you're stacking or destacking on. It's the claim, right? And so the way you can do it, and I'm sort of alluding to this, but Groupon is interested in starting to kick the tires on distribution relationships of our own selectively and where it makes sense. And the way that we'll go about it and the way that we recommend and the way that's supported as well as with the COBRA standard is via last claim attribution. So the way that would work is same offers on multiple programs. Card holder can enroll in multiple programs, see an offer in multiple programs, and then can claim in multiple programs, but only the last claim is the one that wins. So the win sort of bounces around based on where the user claimed, and that's how you'd handle stacking. That's at least how we think the right way to handle stacking in a claimable offer situation is. So anyways, Groupon is, again, just to echo, we fully support sort of the sharing of content and where it makes sense, and again, within reason. Obviously, all of this is hand in hand with network partners. It would be silly to sort of not acknowledge that, right? They're a partner in this because ultimately their transaction data in the way that we do this behind it. So we do it fully in partnership, or we're approaching it fully in partnership with them, and have to make sure we're all doing this sort of in the right manner. But we do fully support sort of this idea of offer distribution. Because of some of the challenges and opportunities and the challenges and the solution to challenge I mentioned. So if anybody wants to sort of industry challenges, I'd love to get into a conversation over a drink later on. So come find me. Thanks.
Ben, if you could join us, have a seat, and great presentation. Wow, lots of content there that you covered, and I also just really appreciate the transparency of the program that you shared with us and how it's working for you. We'll open it up to questions in a moment, but one of the things you mentioned was kind of a turning point for Groupon in considering card linking. Was you talked about the openness of the various payment networks, how they made their networks available through an API so that you could access that data directly. Is there anything, because many of the payment networks are here, Discover, Amex, MasterCard, among others, what would be the thing that you would ask them that you would say, hey, this would really help us bring you more transactions on your card? Through our program. Is there one thing that you would ask the payment networks, hey, you could do this better for us, it would help you, and it would help us as well?
I feel like that's a trick question with the partners in the room.
Well, why is it a trick? It's an opportunity, it's a safe space. You could tell them directly and tell them all at once. So yeah. It's not a trick, it's a gift.
Yeah. I think the one thing to ask, which they are doing and we are doing with them, it's to say, hey, engage with us and work with us in the right way, not just for us, but probably for the industry, because there are others having these conversations as well, to do that content, that offer sharing. And so, when we talk about offer sharing, the first time we got approached, there's been a few companies that approach Groupon and say, hey, wait, Groupon's getting involved in card-linked offers. You've got this big sales force. Now you've got thousands of offers. Like, that's interesting content. Can we feature that on our platform? We run programs for X. But hey, we get the transaction data already, either through our own connections or through issuer data or things like that. Why don't you just give us the offer content, meaning like the terms of the offer, and then we'll score it using our own data, and then we'll tell you, at the end of the month what happened. And we have to sort of say, well, it doesn't work because that same card that's in your, whatever it is, issuer program can go on Groupon and enroll that card in Groupon, and then we'd score the transaction, we'd give attribution through Groupon, and meanwhile you gave it, and there we are, we're back at stacking again. And so we think the only feasible way to do it, even if we're partnering with someone that does have access to their own data, is to allow our data, our transaction data, to dictate, again, for us to be the clearinghouse if we were to do this. And our sort of source of transaction data is the one that triggers it. In that case, what's happening is there's transaction data being used to score a transaction on a third party. And it takes some comfort for a network that's licensing that transaction data to begin with to get comfortable with that model. And again, a hat tip to the card networks for doing so, for having sort of the foresight to understand this is, A, this is what the industry needs, but B, it's good for merchants. It's good for consumers, and we can get comfortable with it. We can do it the right way, I guess is what I'm saying. And so if I were to ask, what can they do? It's what they're doing. Continue to work with us and with others in the industry to streamline the process of getting those approvals and things like that, but also streamline, simply all the processes that go along with that.
Got it. And we're going to open it up to questions. I know there's some questions in the audience, but one question I wanted to ask for you, really on behalf of the other companies in the room, you talked about offer content being really important, right? And I'm struck by the scale of your organization in terms of its ability to source offers. The question is, for companies in this room that would like to work with Groupon, and there are lots of different ways I can imagine, and I've heard some of them today that would like to work with Groupon, how do they go about engaging with you and building a value proposition either around a new product, sharing offer content? How do they work with you? And then second, what type of companies are you most interested in working with? That's the other part of the question. So first of all, how can companies work with you? Secondly, what kind of companies are you most interested in working with?
How is just come find me and I'll give you my card and you can shoot me an email.
All right. Okay.
I'm the partnerships guy for Groupon.
Yeah.
But like I said, I spend 90% of my day in this space, whether, meeting with a lot of the people in this room, talking to a lot of people in this room regularly, and trying to figure out, we're sort of the corp dev, and I'm on the Groupon's corporate development team actually, and we're the sort of the corp dev and strategy team, and so we spend a lot of time trying to think about strategy and how to navigate it. And so I won't say the only interest we have is in companies, that either want to distribute our offer content or things like that. I want to talk to anybody who has ideas about how to work together and how the space is going to grow. And then I don't know what will happen. Maybe we will find something, maybe we won't, but I want to hear from anyone. There's not sort of one flavor. That said, on the offer distribution side, because you sort of alluded to that, because we are continuing to invest heavily in sourcing that local offer content. We'll be, doubling or more as sort of our goals throughout 2018 of the amount of content we have. It's U.S. only today. At some point, maybe we'll expand. But right now it's U.S. only. We may expand into different verticals. So we are investing heavily. And so on the offer distribution side, we face some of the similar constraints that John alluded to earlier, which is there's a approval and an onboarding process and things like that one would have to go through. And so we are going to be constrained in terms of size. John mentioned, 1 million customers. I don't think we have, it's like a hard number, but we can't open the floodgates in terms of offer distribution. We're sort of trying to be thoughtful and strategically, again, hand in hand with our card network partners, find the right way to do it.
Great, thanks. Let's open it up to the audience, and we've got a microphone. Who has a question for Ben from Groupon? Any questions? I'm sure there's, okay. So let's go with John, and then I think there's one from TransUnion as well. So John, you're first. Maybe you introduce yourself and
hey guys.
Which company you represent.
I'm John Carter. I talked about white hot earlier, and apparently that was racist. So what I wanted to do was ask you, Ben. So one of these things. So first off, love the presentation. Really excited to see Groupon, into offer distribution, because I totally agree that's how we all grow, bigger, faster, rising tide type of stuff. But have you guys thought about sort of, how do you get the merchants comfortable with more and more distribution? Because the bill size will go up and up and up as you distribute more and more. And I don't think distribution options are slowing down. I think they're speeding up. So I think the pace of growth is going to be faster. And so pretty soon a merchant's bill is $500 and then $1,000 and then $2,000 and then $5,000. How do you keep them happy in that growing bill size so you can continue to explore more distribution and continue to take more of their marketing dollars away from the other channels without them saying, oh, this bill is just too high, it's too painful?
Yeah, it is a challenge, right? If you think about Groupon shifting from vouchers to card-linked offers, it completely flips the money flow, right? If we sell vouchers on behalf of a merchant, we run a campaign, we sell 20 for 40s, we sell $40,000 worth of vouchers, whatever it is. We're cutting a check to the merchant, right? We're cutting them a check for their portion of it. They're receiving money from us. Granted, somebody's come in with a voucher and they're expecting $40 worth of services for their $20 voucher, but the money's going from us to them. And with card-linked offers, we're marketing their offer. Somebody's coming in, paying in full at the merchant. We have to bill them. We have to actually pull money from them, not only for the reward amount that we're putting back on a user's card, but also for our marketing fee. And it's a big challenge, right, of not surprising them. I know that others in the industry have, yourself included, have sort of dealt with this as well, right? You don't want to shock them with the bill. The thing, I guess, what we're hopeful and what we're, I think, seeing some results from, but it's early and there's still a lot more that we can do, and as an industry, and also sort of we're working with card network partners and others, is reporting, right? Is reporting to show incrementality, right? That's sort of the buzzword. Can I show true incrementality? If you put a bill in front of a merchant, but it shows this is your net new customers, this was your lapsed customers, this is the increase in basket size, that sort of stuff, then I think you've got, you've more or less got, I won't say unlimited budget, but it eases a lot of those questions and a lot of the shock if you can sort of show that. So that's the way we're going, and trying to push, as I know others here are, for a greater and maybe more standardized way to receive that sort of reporting. The challenge, as I know you're aware, is when you don't have issuer data or you are not a card network yourself, you don't have visibility into what happened before that user enrolled in your program. So in isolation, all you can do is report on what happened after enrollment, which is a tracked transaction, right? You don't know, is that a new customer? Did they go the day before? Have they not been there at all? What was their average basket size previously, right? You need a partner. If you're like us, if you're an open consumer program, you need a partner to help you with it, and that's a key.
Okay, thank you. I think we had a question from TransUnion.
Yeah, perfect. So,
could you just mention your name and your company, please?
yeah, TransUnion and Scott Gordon. So you mentioned stacking. Can you quantify the impact of the stacks? Like, did you mention that you can find them on Reddit? It seems like maybe it's kind of a long tail issue for people that are just kind of searching for the gap. But is this a $1 billion issue? Is there a $1,000 issue? Where does it sit?
I think it's small. I think it's small, and I think the industry historically has sort of said that's a good, I wouldn't say a good problem to have, but like it's not happening because there's not enough cardholders previously who are enrolled in these programs. And that's why I'm just saying now, hey, it's time for us to talk about this more, is because more and more cards are enrolling in these programs. So I do think it's quite small, and I think the number of people who go to those obscure Reddit, and I think the instance by which it does happen is accidental. I don't think it's a consumer maliciously trying to do it in most cases. There are certainly people who, deal seekers who understand this and do, try to put it together. What's that? You would? Yeah. Your average consumer just isn't, isn't putting that much time into it. So I don't think it's a huge issue. We haven't had major issues with it. But it's an industry issue, right? It's not really like any one program's issue. We're doing things, right? Groupon signs a merchant, it's fine. We're not double charging them. That merchant's participating in another unrelated program, and maybe does or doesn't understand the consequences or takes the risk. And then a consumer doesn't necessarily, they may just sort of stumble into it. So I think it's just going to happen more and more, but I don't want to, we don't see like a big instance of this today. I just think as the trend of participation grows, it's only natural that these collisions will happen more frequently.
And just for context on that, that's definitely an issue that as an association we've been tracking since our inception about 4 years ago. We knew that this was going to be an issue over time, and that's why we created a work group and a standard to address this. And in fact, that standard has been revised since then and actually been published again. But it's clear, as Ben pointed out, that at some point, beyond the standards, there has to be some sort of industry utility or platform that can dedupe stacking transactions. But let's be clear, this is a much bigger problem outside of card linking than it is in card linking. Many of you have seen the reality TV shows where the person, goes to their local store. In fact, there's a TV series about this. They go to their local store with a stack of coupons and buy $1,000 worth of goods and pay 50 cents or nothing, right? So it's a much bigger issue in the traditional coupon world. It has not become an issue yet for card linking, but we have the opportunity to prevent it from ever becoming an issue, as Ben pointed out. So that's the context for it. But thank you for bringing that up. I think there was one more question here on the back wall here.
Hello. Yeah. Ethan Slotkin with Hot Sauce. Question for you. So, okay, we're trying to remove stacking from happening, which is excellent, right? I mean, that helps the small businesses at the end of the day. And we're trying to do that potentially with a central repository of offers, right? So it comes from one place, gets published in several platforms. That sounds like it's a little bit heading towards a monopoly, right? In which case, there's pricing that exists there, and then there's naturally people who come in to undercut the pricing there. Not to mention the fact that there are small businesses who we know have high margins to begin with. So how do we as an entity, prevent the margins from getting diminished so small that this industry doesn't eventually fade at a certain point in time, after the monopoly then kind of climbs down afterwards?
Yeah, so I would just jump in here and say, we've got a very strict antitrust policy, so we never discuss pricing or margins in the context of our conferences, especially because there are so many competitors. But you raise an important issue, which is structurally, right? How do you create an ecosystem where everyone can compete for the merchant's business and offer the best and fair price in an arm's length transaction? I think that's a key question you're asking. Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are the one node solution is not a solution. I don't think that that's possible. There are too many different offer flavors. Like if you have one node, then you have to sort of have one offer construct. And there can be various offer constructs, and one network can specialize in one offer construct, and another network can specialize in another offer construct. And there may be the possibility for stacking between them, but at least if you're minimizing between networks, hey, you're safe sort of within this network, and you're safe within this network, and then through education and making sure everybody is sort of doing their part in the space to educate merchants, hey, if you participate in these two merchants, networks merchant, sort of you understand eyes wide open what the risks are, then you do so with full knowledge. To me, that's probably the right way. This is where, I would definitely say Groupon is interested in engaging with the industry to see what ideas there are, but I find it difficult to think that there is a one solution that can completely eliminate this risk. And I think it would be silly, at least initially, to try to do that. I think the right thing to do is to take the initial steps to minimize, and this concept of offer networks probably makes sense.
Okay. Do we have one last question? Any last questions? All right, Ben, thank you so much.